this is one of the things I did want to talk to you about, though. I'm
Mm.
kind of glad you brought this up. You and I are public figures. People hold us up to some degree of this is I think a struggle a lot of people in the space of nutrition and fitness deal with, which is that you're wanting to be a good example for others. You care a lot when people are reaching out to you and saying, you've changed my life, your advice has been great, right? But I have two dimensions. One dimension, on the public side, I actually would probably be a lot more open about the foods I eat. And I have said in podcasts several times before, I bounce between keto and low carb. I'm typically low carb, but sometimes I'm not fully low carb, right? And when I'm not, it's usually not foods I would brag about, right? But the other dimension that I'm struggling with, that's a real big one, is that I have family members that are very severely type 2 diabetic. And I'm in a bit of a tug of war with the more challenged cases, wanting to talk them into being lower carb, because I believe that that's the success, that's the pathway that they need. And therefore, as a public figure, I have a tough time with not sharing it because I'm worried so much about the general public seeing it. I'm worried about it getting back to those folks, even though I know I metabolize it better than they do. But these dimensions of difficulty, I think a lot of people don't realize we struggle with in addition to that. Doesn't mean that there's a right way to handle it per se. But you're exactly right. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast, is I want to get back to a place where I can be a little bit more authentic and that I can be more open, and that I'm hoping for the same from the guests, that we can find ways to discuss more what it is that we struggle with.
Well, and I think it's important because when you have a face-to-face conversation with a podcast guest, is much more intimate than it is when you do it over Zoom. Like, let's be clear.
100%.
That's number one. And number two, I think that as hard as it is for us to show that vulnerability side of ourselves, I can tell you that personally. So I mentioned I've been trying to put on 5 pounds of muscle, which as a woman in menopause is like an act of Congress, even with hormone replacement therapy, even with doing strength training, all these things. It has been challenging. And so I had to say to my community, and I had a whole conversation with my team. I said, my platform over the past 5 years has largely been speaking publicly about intermittent fasting. Now I'm going to say to my followers, I still believe in the value of fasting. I fervently believe in the value of digestive rest. However, for me personally, at this time in my life, I'm doing a lot less fasting because I need to put muscle on. The first time I said that on a podcast, I told my team, I'm waiting for the hate. That's where my brain went. People are going to hate this. They're going to be upset with me. It was exactly the contrary. People were like, I get chills thinking about this. I so respect the fact that you are sharing openly and transparently what you are doing differently, because, oh my gosh, I feel completely the same way. Or someone else would say, I respect that so much, because it means when you come on and talk about something, it's so much more authentic. Like, there are people out there who are so afraid to move out between the lines. They don't color outside the lines. I color outside the lines because I'm a person that tends to be flexible. I understand the value of sharing so transparently, because I really do care about my community. I care about the lives that I've impacted. And it's not just women, it's also men, because they share that with me. So I think when we are fearful of sharing something about ourselves that maybe we're like, I don't know if my community is going to like seeing that, or maybe it'll just validate for them. Like, I had the same issue. I was wondering if this was the right decision for me. I used to be very low carb for a long time. I'm very lean for being a 53-year-old woman. And so I like to share the fact, first of all, that's my age. Second of all,
I speak for a good jillion people that you do not all look like a 53-year-old woman.
And I'm pretty lean. So for me, like, I didn't have to be this protracted, long-standing process of being low carb all the time and self-flagellating when I ate higher carb. I've come to realize, like, I actually do well with fruit. I can eat just about any kind of fruit, except a plantain, which is sad. but that's a whole separate conversation. But I think for each one of us, it's like, let's not be rigid. Let's color outside the lines. Let's make sure we show that with our communities because it makes us relatable. And I know your community members and your subscribers, I know they know you care. But sometimes when we show the messy, ugly stuff, people appreciate that.
Well, they do because they're doing it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
This is what, by the way, this is another reason why I get a bit frustrated with the diet space is how many people do you know, for real, who've been on the exact same diet for even 5 years? 5 years. And we hear all the time, oh, I've been on X diet my whole life. And
No, you're not.
and in my mind, yeah, I'm thinking,
No,
I just
you're
don't
not.
believe you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think that there are certain cuisines of a given region that may be commonplace. But as far as somebody being on an extremely strictly distinctive diet that could be easily quantified and understood, no, people experiment with diet all the time. And a lot of times they're introduced to new foods through friends. They travel and they try something there, and then they find out that they like something. There's some new product that's introduced to them from a friend or family that's now a new sauce that they like to use that got them into this other. That's humans that I've yet to. So yes, there's a bunch of people who for sure, like us, might be thinking, boy, I wish I just had both the time and the interest in making all my food from scratch, like your parents, putting in that, that level of effort, because I'm pretty sure it would be a lot better for my health.
Mhm.
But I'm kind of working with what I've got, and can I at least keep improving, or at least stay, if I'm feeling good about my metabolic health right now, at least stay stable to where I'm at.
Yeah.
Right. So let me volunteer. Like, we've opened the box. I drink a lot of diet soda, right? I had a year and a half where I had only water. I was very proud of that. COVID starts, and I won't go into all the details, but there was a little bit more to the calculus than that. But I've always had a sweet tooth, and I thought, oh, actually what I can do is, while we're traveling, because we were traveling around the world for 9 weeks, because I know I can't carry around Lily's chocolates everywhere, keep it in constant supply. My one sweetness is I'll allow diet sodas to get back into my life, right? So it gets back into my life, and I had a difficult time getting fully off of it. And in truth, I'm still not fully off it. I have a lot more electrolyte drinks, but the difference is my big push for this year is I want to just have no aspartame. So I have SodaStream, like behind me in the kitchen right now, sucralose, but that has hardly an impact on it. It's different for different people, but for me, it has hardly any impact on my glucose levels. And for me, that's my one vice is I seem to not be able to get away from something sweet in my life every day. And that's a component that may just always have to be there. Now, I genuinely don't have sweetened drinks. It's usually some version of a diet drink, right? I know that there's some people in this space who say diet drink, or some artificial sweeteners are worse than sugar. For me, though, I'm coming from pre-diabetic context,
Mhm.
and I intend to not actually. I intend to never really have sugary drinks, me personally. But it's how I manage for the most part. It's kind of my one vice for which I can get kind of a lead into the other healthier habits, I think, that I have with food otherwise.
I think diet soda is relatively like so benign. I have a very healthy 55-year-old husband, and his like great vice is Diet Pepsi. And so I jokingly said to him one day, I was in the grocery store, and he doesn't normally buy it to have at home, but if we go to a restaurant, sometimes if he's not having an alcoholic beverage, I'll have a Diet Pepsi. And I bought him the little cans of Diet Pepsi. Do you know that like made his week? Because he was like, I'm going to stretch that little packet of teeny Diet Pepsis. He said, it just makes me happy. There's something about the effervescence and the taste. And I was like, more power to you. If that makes you happy, that to me seems so benign. And this is where like the rigid dogmatism and the shame around food, I think, is problematic. And I say this in the most loving way possible because I don't think people do it intentionally.
Right.
When they start pointing fingers, it's like, oh, that's terrible. When in the grand scheme of things, Dave, probably 90% of your lifestyle is you know, nutrient dense, whole foods, protein centric.
No. It's
Okay,
not
we'll
90%,
just
but
okay. So we'll just say whatever
it's
the percentage
way
is.
better than it used to be.
Yes.
But I don't know if I hit the 90%.
Okay, so we'll say 80%. But
yeah.
the point being, I think if you are metabolically healthy, you have a bit more wiggle room. It's around like sugarless gum. There was someone who was fixated on the fact that occasionally I will chew sugarless gum. And I said, I think it's from years of working in the hospital because I oftentimes couldn't stop to eat anything, let alone drink anything, because you don't have to go to the bathroom. And I'd be rounding on patients. So I would chew sugarless gum because it also camouflaged bad patient breath. That was one of the things that I remember. It was like really good for camouflaging that as I was having conversations with patients. And someone was, doing
Great pro tip.
Yeah. I mean, it works wonders because then it also, a lot of patients and other healthcare providers, frankly, have like stale coffee breath and you're talking to them. And I was like, if I'm chewing the gum, I don't have to smell any of that. But the whole shame and blame game around nutrient density, whether it's around specific foods. I mean, I'll call this person out because I think he can be obnoxious. There is a carnivore person, not Sean Baker, who is lovely, who goes a little bit on like the extreme about everything. And I think it was even toilet paper was one of the things he was ranting about one day. And I thought to myself, if we already have a population of people that feel in many ways badly about themselves because they're obese, overweight, have binge eating, can't lose the weight, they've gone through this vicious yo-yo dieting cycle, and then you're going to beat them up because they have a diet soda, or they choose to have sugarless gum, or they choose to have Lily's chocolate, which, by the way, I take with me everywhere. Like when I go on business trips, I bring a little bar.
It's great, isn't
yes,
it?
I do. And I don't feel any guilt. So my kids laugh about it. They're like, we went to Belize for a week and my kids were like, how much Lily's dark chocolate are you taking with you? I was like, 2 bricks. Cause I have one little, like one little square each, like, the little row. I have one every day. But all these people that do all this shame and blame game around nutrition, they're part of the problem. I really think that for the bulk of us, it's well-intentioned information that we're sharing, but I think there are just as many other people that try to be divisive and critical, and they contribute to that vicious shame. And I think I can only really speak to women specifically on this topic as a middle-aged woman. Middle-aged women are trying really hard. They already are beating themselves up because their bodies are doing all sorts of weird things that everything that used to work no longer works. And then they've got some fit influencer who's 25 that has 6% body fat, that's a dude, telling them that, wagging his finger and telling them that don't, no diet soda, the devil is the sugarless gum, and God forbid you have a piece of Lily's dark chocolate. I think that it makes me wonder if we are in an alternative universe. It's like, what is going on?
This is another topic. So at the very beginning,